Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to have you with us today as we start to study pricing and how to maximize the value that you get from each customer. And we're going to do so in a way that's rather esoteric. In fact, I'd like to share with you 3 images. These images are gathered from the material that we will cover together. And I have a question for you. Number 1, can anybody identify the name of the person on the right? And Dave Fogel, yes, the flu is gone, although I'm still sort of dealing with a little bit of sinuses, but I'm good. Thank you for asking. I'll tell you, it was a tough one last week. I got a lot of good comments, and I was grateful for your encouragement. I'm glad that we went ahead and went forward with doing the program despite being ill. But let's follow up on that with this picture. Does anybody here know who that is? Take a look at the picture. Who is that person on the right? And if you're not clear about that, and hi Cassidy, or Christy, thanks for joining us. Who is that man on the right? And while you're thinking about that, look at the 3 images. There is a slogan from the Marines, the few, the proud. There is a Cinnabon picture, and there's the picture of a peculiar philosopher, psychologist, particularly known for his work in psychology and in something today called logotherapy, from the Greek word logos. After his death, he is survived by centers all over the world. Any idea? And if you're not sure yet, I'll give you one more clue. He survived 4 concentration camps. And he's going to say something that we'll share with you later today that has intense application to how you think about maximizing value and really the strategic direction of your pricing. So, yes, he was in those concentration camps as a prisoner, and he suffered many hardships and triumphed over them all, and later wrote a book at a time when this number is outrageous, that sold immediately 5 million copies and continued to sell and still sells today. And I don't need to explain Cinnabons to you. We all know their evil appeal. All right? So, yes, Brianna, that is Viktor Frankl. And today I'm going to be sharing with you something from Viktor Frankl and Alfred Adler and Freud, indirectly from Nietzsche, and every bit of it connects to you as a marketer, the meaning of what you're doing, and how to bring value and present it to your customers. We're going to look at the psychology of pricing. And this is the key to truly achieving the greatest impact with your communication and your messaging therein. Now, take a deep breath and now look at 3 treatments. Control, treatment 1, treatment 2. These are from a huge brand, one of the biggest media brands in the country. And you'll see each of these, and all that matters is the top of the page, and we've anonymized some of it, but we focused exactly on the area that will be critical. And I'm going to ask you to tell me, just based on, I'll call it the look and feel, where things are on the page, which one do you think will produce the most conversion? Now, I don't expect you to have everything you need to make a well-informed answer, but I do want to get your brains moving. Dave Fogel has already jumped on 2 because of the headline and subheadline, and that's a good reason, Dave. Brian Ritchie chooses 2. Robert chooses 1. Somebody else, take a look, vote. Kyle, thanks for your courage. That's 1 from Kyle. Dave points out that point 1 has bullet points. Yes. Joshua Singer says, I'm inclined to agree with 2, and Shane says 1. You can keep those coming in, and you can keep thinking, because we're going to come back to this case study and use it to introduce a new concept to you in pricing strategy. In fact, we're going to introduce concepts today that have, I don't think, ever been taught before. But more importantly, I want to share with you a set of resources. 1, these are all resources from our current library that you can pull from in order to think about pricing. And I can tell you that they span many years. We have over 10,000 research briefs and case studies and articles online. And we've done more than 20,000 experiments. But despite all that you see there and the content therein, we're going to talk about something brand new today, something I've never shared on YouTube or even in a class. We do share it internally with our scientists in the HD group. HD stands for Hypothesis Development. But I'm going to ask Benaiah, who's working with me today, to share the actual resources on the browser that I've picked from this list, okay? So he's just going to pull up one, and I'm going to show you some interesting content. It is important because it'll connect to what we teach, but again, we're going to teach something new. Look at this. This is when should you reveal the price in your shopping cart. It's on Marketing Experiments. It's a blog post. It's interesting. Dan Burstein wrote this. I didn't. It's an excellent article talking about a certain movie called The Prestige, brilliant film, and it talks about every magic trick has three components. Stop right there. The pledge, the turn, and the prestige, which is the reveal of the, of the illusion. And then Dan likens that to how you talk about price. Seth Godin, he spoke at my events, and he's a good man, and he's written, I think, perhaps his best book so far, called This is Marketing. Seth says, quite appropriately, price is a strategy. Price is a story. Now, take me to another. I'm sharing that resource because I want you to start thinking very differently about price. And these are all resources selected that jar your thinking. This is not so much to get you to visit the resource. You're welcome to do so. My only strategy here is to introduce price in a different way. So pull me up another resource. Which one do you have now? Let me go full screen on the resources, Cliff, so that I can see them myself. Pricing Psychology. And this is a shopping guide that lifts order value 35%. Scroll down. And so this is a unique pricing experiment. Let's just stop for a second. This is a price experiment where people were allowed to make certain choices. And I want you to see one key piece from this. This is from Dan Ariely's work. And the summation of it is he had people write down the last two digits of their Social Security number before they engaged with the price. And and this is the interesting finding, when the number was higher, and I am oversimplifying and I am summarizing, you can read more about it here. Give me back full screen, Cliff. When the number was higher, people, you can see, placed bids or prices that were 216 to 346% higher than those that had lower last digits. What's going on here? Something about writing that number impacted perception, and as we have taught here many times, in marketing so often, perception becomes the reality. Now, there are more studies, and I want you to see these studies. The next one's really interesting, though. Take me to the one about eggs, premium pricing. You may be thinking to yourself, eggs? Well, the person we interviewed for Marketing Sherpa in this case, and I think it was Dan also that interviewed them, includes this. Do you see that farm news, sort of old school? It looks like the Farmer's Digest. They included this particular story when they sell you a carton of eggs. Now, they charge a premium price that is multiples higher than what you would normally pay for eggs. But somehow, the packaging of the egg, the story that comes with a carton of eggs, all serves to get customers to pay more and to reorder. What's going on here? I think the greatest mistake we so often make about price is thinking that price is a number. Price is not a number. And I'm going to unpack price today using something rather radical to do so, and I'll go back to the slide deck and raise one single question, and we'll spend every moment of our time today understanding the answer to this question through a unique set of lenses that have not been taught before. The first, the question, let's go to the next slide, is just this: how can I get the most value per customer? Now, I get asked that question all the time. Sometimes we try to increase the average order value. Sometimes you try to increase the length of a recurring revenue stream, such as a subscription. There are more than one way. Sometimes we get people to choose a higher price point, and on the point goes. But my thinking today is that we need to get beneath the number and into the mind. If we stay at the numerical level in our thinking, we will blind ourselves, because that number symbolizes a cost which is associated and indeed subtracted from another number. And that is the subconscious sometimes conscious perceived value. The number itself is not what changes behavior. It's the difference between two perceptions, the perception of the actual value and the perception associated with all of the cost. And sometimes that's price, and sometimes it's much more than price. So if you keep that in mind, I want to open the day up and the teaching piece of our time together up by drawing a peculiar construction of concepts on the board. And these need to be pre-tested, if you would, for me, guys. Let me just move to another one real quick. All right. Here we go. This is the vertical axis. This is a horizontal axis. In fact, I'll draw it a different way for purposes of clarity. And I need my eraser here. They are. All right. So let's draw it almost the same way, but slightly different. Here's the horizontal line, and this is the vertical line. I'm going to put an H here, and I'm going to put a V here. And I want to suggest to you that everything we do today to talk about price can be understood with this simple diagram, but it starts to get more interesting when you think about what it's really trying to say. We're going to use horizontal as a dimensional concept to help you think about timing. So this line is the timing line. And believe it or not, the timing of the ask could be as important as the number itself. So if you're following with me, I'm going to take you to the vertical line. The vertical line has to do with something different on the dimension. I want you to think of it as representing sort of quantity, or how much. In this case, we're going to take that word, invert it, pull it through its epicenter, and we're going to use the concept intensity. So here we have timing, and here we have intensity. Now, I'm trying to answer one question. And if you've just joined us, we're trying to understand how to get the most value out of the relationship we have with a customer. That's the question. But we're going to try to answer it through exploring the horizontal line first, and you'll find this will become point one of our time together, and then through the intensity, and you'll see this will be point two. So this is point one, this is point two, and now we explore timing. To do that, I'm going to take you on a journey with me, starting with a strange picture. What you might see on the screen now is a diagram built by our artist while trying to solve a very complex problem for a remarkable company. This company offers software as a service. They're unique. Their leadership is very, very sharp. They're very profitable, and they're very effective. However, I want to share with you the diagram without talking about the company because I want to protect their privacy. This was put on the conference wall. It was poster size, very large. And you'll notice at the top of the diagram are critical conversion rates. You'll see the credit card page with a 0.3% trial rate. Then look beneath it and you'll see conclusions. And I would advocate for many of you that one of the greatest takeaways you could get from our time together today is to map your journey in a similar way. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. But at the bottom are conclusions that help us understand the sequence of thought associated with the purchase. These are the conclusions we want you to make. And they're connected from the traffic forward, because we find the locus of identity in the source of traffic. And so as that person A, person B, and person C, let's call them, representing different segments, move through our journey, then at each key junction, we want them to make certain conclusions. I've said this to you for 25 years or 20 years. There is no such thing as a web page, and I don't believe in optimizing web pages. We must get beneath the signals and symbols of the page into the zeros and ones, down into the thought sequence. That is where optimization truly occurs. It doesn't occur on the page, it occurs in the mind. In fact, we could go further and take that point further. The human being is distinguished particularly from many other living creatures by our ability to generate and find value and meaning from symbols. This is why we have writing and the way we leverage words, but it goes much deeper than that. And this has been studied by philosophers and psychologists, and it's been analyzed by neuroscientists. And what I'd want you to take away from just that simple last 2 or 3 paragraphs is that all this diagram really represents is a series of symbols that are creating a stimulus, an experience in the mind. And what we're trying to do to improve the conversion rates you see across the top of the page is to order the stimulus in such a way as to produce a different set of conclusions. Now, if you know that, then I'm going to go back to the timing line and I'm going to ask you a simple question. Why did we present this? And if you're not clear, if you're trying to read it on your screen, it is laying out every step in the process and the order that you see these steps. So there are the traffic sources coming in. You can see email, affiliate boards, page search, direct, organic. Then they come to the login, and then if they are already a member, this is what happens. If they're not, this is what happens. And then you can see the flow. It's the natural flow through the symbol set, which you would call a page. But a web page is only a symbol set. It's neither a web or a page. And those symbol sets are flowing, and we are diagramming them. And we're doing it because we're searching for a critical concept, the key concept that you must learn with this horizontal line about timing. It is a concept that we developed in our research lab based on patterning the conversion experience from thousands of these. In fact, we've spent 30 years studying one thing. In Greek, it's called metanoia. And metanoia is that sort of transformative decision, the type of decision that changes your stasis. If you are a citizen of Florida and you move to New York, that's a form of metanoia. That's a form of conversion. If you voted for Hillary and now you intend to vote for Trump, that's another form of metanoia. I know it's a big stretch from one to the other, but that's metanoia. If you were a Protestant and you became a Catholic, you went through metanoia. If you were a prospect and you became a customer, you went through another form of metanoia. I'm interested in only one thing. I'm interested in the process in the mind that leads to metanoia. And I've discovered that it's not a single yes, but it's a culmination of micro yeses. And beneath the micro yeses are a series of conclusions. And so one of the concepts we've had to develop in the lab in order to study this more efficiently is represented in our work internally among our HD team and their scientists as M. Now, in a moment, I'm going to unpack that, and I'm going to teach you a concept that you should be asking right now. Every single person on this phone that has a funnel needs to understand this. If you understand this, you may find that you can raise average order value not by changing your product or lowering your price, but simply changing when you ask for it. So stay with me. But before I get to an explanation of this, I'll take you back to the case study we looked at the beginning, Test Protocol 1645 in our library. And you'll notice it's a large sports entertainment. It's a huge media company. They also had fantasy football. And they want to increase league startups. And so they ask us a how question, which we always turn into a why question and a what question using something we call the discovery triad. And ultimately, we take the control, the symbol set of that page, analyze it for the stimulus it's creating in the mind, then diagnose where that stimulus may be inadequate to produce the right conclusions, then form a research question, and from the research question, form a 4-part hypothesis that teaches us something, whether we see a lift in terms of conversion going up or we see conversion going down. Either way, the learning is significant, and then we compound the learnings until we've maximized conversion. So in this case, based on traffic and other variables, having determined optimal test velocity, and having diagnosed the problems you see on this screen, we see price right there. And this is the key piece I want you to focus on in the experiment. And this was a part of how we thought about, and we isolated later. If you say, can you change more variable than once? Yes, but not more than one hypothesis. If you try to change one variable in a test, you'll never learn anything. One button is probably 6 variables. You're going to change just the color? How about the shape? You're going to change the words? Or if you do, just one word. And maybe you could argue just one letter. Or maybe it should just be the color. The whole idea of changing one variable at a time is absurd, and it's not good science. It's certainly bad business. What you need to do is a cluster of variables that all represent one hypothesis. We teach that in other places. I won't teach it now. I just bring it up for those of you that are engaged in testing and can get trapped by poor thinking. So then we go forward, and in this treatment, you're going to notice one thing only, and I want you to notice that the price has changed. You don't see much about price, and we're only dealing with the top of the page. That's all we could test in for this experiment. I won't get into more, but I'm going to show you another treatment, and you'll see, again, we've approached it in a different way, and I won't get into that right now. But ultimately, the control has a web page, and then treatment 1 and treatment 2, and then you had the series that you see in terms of where price is presented. Treatment 1 revealed, but de-emphasized the price on the first page. We thought if people didn't see anything about the price, they might be alarmed, and we create a new implied type of friction or anxiety. We often find friction. I've taught that for 20 years. We were the first lab to do so. But in addition to that, there's a new concept that we've used for about 10 years that is barely understood in the marketplace called implied friction. Implied friction happens when you do something positive that you think will be good, and yet it creates a new type of fear that you didn't see, and thus a new type of anxiety or a new type of concern, which is anxiety. Resistance is friction, and concern is anxiety. They're two separate pieces treated two separate ways. All you need to know from what I just said is in the first treatment, the price was touched so you could see it, but de-emphasized. In the second treatment, we didn't even reveal the price until the second week of the free trial. So you have treatment 1, treatment 2. I'm gonna stop right there. You voted on this, but you didn't know that piece of information. So now I'd like you to vote again. Just tell me again. And it really isn't about looking at the treatment. All I want you to think about now is just the location of the price in the buy process. If I were asking you to make a good judgment on the page, I'd have given you a much bigger picture and more time. But if I did that, we wouldn't learn what we're here to learn today. We've taught that in other places. So Kyle says 2. And if I'm not pronouncing, is it Chow or Kyle? If I'm not pronouncing it right, you just let me know, and we'll try to do better. Shannon, 2. Joshua says 2. And Cassidy says 2. Does anybody think 1? David says 2 also. So 2 is where we don't even show the price until the second week of the free trial. 1 is where we show it, but we de-emphasize it, so it's not a big factor in terms of visual impact. All right? I see Brianna at 1, Danielle at 1, Robert at 1, all right? And this, Maria's at 1, Dave's at 2. You can pretty much always vote the opposite of Dave and you'll get it right. I'm kidding, Dave. Dave just sent me a box of fishing lures, and that's really close to my heart, Dave. It's pretty hard to do. That's like sending my wife flowers. Thank you, friend. So let's look again. Something produced a 97% increase, and guess what it was? 2. Now, whoa! You should really get past the box and the numbers and the percentage and think about the true impact of that. I was there. I was there when, after a series of experiments, the CFO of this massive television network, give you another hint, said to me, "This is the most successful project we have ever run in this business division." And they were thrilled. So it wasn't just this 97, it was followed by several other powerful lifts that literally put them back on target. They hit their numbers, they exceeded their numbers, and they had a success. And they deserve all the credit for it. I'm not trying to take any credit on our side. the execution of this required their deep commitment and engaged help. And all I can tell you is, you and I need to step back and ask a few questions out of this. Was this because we tricked people? No. I mean, you could think about this. What if you did a free trial and then you're surprised by a price 2 weeks in? Any one of you could make a powerful argument that that's the wrong move. But we didn't have any customer service problems. We didn't have any complaints. And we doubled revenue. Think again. Doubled revenue. So there's something deep here. And now you should be asking another question. What's really going on? What happened here that I can learn from that could impact how I talk, and more importantly, when I talk about price? Well, and Dave, you're right. Dave knows this. Dave runs the service business. I've talked about him a lot. I'm impressed with him. He's a natural marketer. And I don't engage in flattery. I despise it. But read his comment. It's true. And it connects to what I'm going to say next, the MMM. The MMM stands for the maximum moment of motivation. Now, in the process that people take in their mind, they're going on a thought journey. And the micro yeses ease them along. It propels them forward through the funnel. And there is a point along that journey when you have reached the maximum power of your value. If you keep talking about value past that, it actually sometimes diminishes conversion. It's called the point. It's another piece. But we call it the point of diminishing return, and we call it the point of diminishing value, borrowing from the old concept. I'm dealing with it right now. I met with our hypotheses development people. I was with a room of brilliant people, Matt Klein and Donnie from our side. Donnie is both the degrees in psychology and in accounting. And we were analyzing a process, and we realized that they went past the moment, the maximum moment of motivation. They were getting diminishing value because they talked too much after they had peaked in terms of my perceived value of the offering. Now, why is that important? Because we get results regularly here by doing nothing but moving where the price is asked. And it does not mean always later. Many times it's sooner. All I want you to take away from this is the value, the importance of determining when has my story peaked. Price is a story. When have I peaked in creating the maximum motivation in response to the presentation of value? And it is right at that point that I implement my pricing strategy. And pricing is a strategy, not a number. It may be that you need to show what they could have paid somewhere else before you give them the price. It may be that you need to show what they would have paid a month ago for the same item with you before you reveal the price. We all do little variations of this, but we don't maximize it. We just copy what other people are doing because we don't understand the underlying principle, and thus we don't get the most value out of it. What I would say to you as a homework assignment, if you want to get the most value from this event together, is to go back and map your funnel, every step of it. Put each of your signal sets in that diagram. You can use Visio. You can do it on paper with a pen. I'm happy to do it that way myself. You can whiteboard it. Get it up there. Get your conversions rate up there. Then ask yourself, what are the conclusions that I need them to draw at each one of these key junctions? Then say, look at your presentation of your value proposition, and then ask yourself, when have I reached that peak moment when I've said the most I can say, done the best that I can do, reached the crescendo? Then ask yourself, how far is my price point from that direction? Is it too far south or too far north? Get a sense of that in your mind, and then one of your most interesting experiments will be simply trying to connect the ask to the most. What do you mean? Well, you want them to feel the most value, so you want the most to be aligned with the ask. Is this making sense? I have more to teach. I have another point to teach. I think it's more interesting than this point, but I want to make sure it's making sense and you're finding value in what I'm saying. Am I too abstract? Can you see application of this theoretically? We're going to do live op today. I'm going to try to give you examples if I can find the time. But please let me know very quickly. I'm reading, as you can see, I see your pieces coming in. I think sometime we should take a picture of the studio from this point and let everybody see like all the monitors and the setup and how we work. In the future, we're going to invite you to come to the studio and observe as we tape and record and so on, and be a part of our team that day. But we are in the middle of a giant move. So when we get it all set, that'll be the next piece. I'm looking at the feedback. I think I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm going to move you right now to the intensity line in my diagram, and we're going to go on a little journey together. And so let us suppose that you get the price aligned with the maximum amount of motivation. So now what you've done is MMM and price are at the exact place. Let's call this the line. Let this represent the signal sets and the funnel flow. And let's suppose that that moment is right here. Now, you are aligning two things, the value and the price. And what I mean is the perception of value and the price to that moment. But let's suppose that if that is where the line is, then what other thing can you do to get more people to say yes, to drive up your value? Well, if you can drive higher up on the value line, so imagine this is how much value they perceive. You may be right here now, and that's sufficient to get people with high motivations to say yes, but people who perhaps have lower motivations even coming in, their problem isn't as intense to them. Maybe it's not as time sensitive or as urgent, for whatever the reason. You need to know how to get this number higher. So the power comes by connecting this line, and we could graph the improvement and you could see it. But I think you get the concept. And it's more important now to spend time teaching you how to lever that up. Now, I am tempted to teach about value proposition, but I've done that, and it's not the time to do that. But if you haven't heard that, there's nothing I can say in the next 30 minutes more important than go get the latest YouTube presentation on the value proposition. It's in the playlist. It's a good time for me to say subscribe, ask, share. And I'm learning to do that. And I'm too old to do that naturally, but I know it needs to be done. So please subscribe. Please invite people. But I will tell you that on Marketing Experiments, that's the YouTube channel currently, we may change it to Flint McGlaughlin because of confusion, but we're not sure yet. We're testing. What I would say is go to Marketing Experiments and subscribe, but go to the playlist, and there's one on value proposition, and get that most recent one, because it takes a 12-week college course, a graduate course, a master's program that we wrote, summarizes all 12 weeks in 50 minutes. Do that, because that's got to be right to start with. But let's assume you've got that. Now, that value proposition has to appeal to a person. So here's a value prop. And over here is the customer. All right, so now I have a customer. I'm going to talk to you about making certain that the value prop hits a bullseye in the customer's mind. We've got to hit the exact bullseye. I don't want it to strike left, strike right. I want it to be exactly on point. And to get it on point, you have to understand what I'm going to teach today. Shane, thanks for the kind words about the value prop course. We've written a new one. It's 12 weeks long. We're getting ready to release it too. And I do appreciate that. So how do we get this value prop aligned with the bullseye of what matters most to them? And I want you to focus on that concept. It's about what matters most. And I'm hot. Cliff, I'm not going to mess anything up by taking my jacket off. Cliff's our executive producer. I can take my coat off? Okay, I'll take my coat off, which will probably... I'm just going to give it over here. Benaya's with me and Austin's with me. If you miss Paul, Paul is busy starting a business. And so cheer for him, reach out to him. He already had a growing eBay business, and he's applying the things he's learned here. And he's still in the building, but he's doing some cool things. Benaya's here, Austin Spence is here, and Cliff is in the studio and others that are supporting us. Let me go back to this point. You ready to learn the second piece? Let's get into it. All right, so now I bring three great thinkers. I want to make a few points. First of all, you'll learn more about marketing if you get outside of the marketing literature and get into the mind literature. Did you hear that? I may be creating, as a follow-up to the book, which, by the way, those of you that have bought the advanced copy of my book, it hits the stands next year. And in the meantime, the publishers are, asking for the follow-up books. There's a book that I'll never get famous for. Nobody will care about it from a standpoint of our brand, but it's just needed. It's just needed, and it's a reader. And what we would do is pull the best content from multiple sources going back to Aristotle's Poetics and all the way forward through philosophers and psychologists and give you short passages to digest that would help you think about marketing in a new way. So I want to bring up three thinkers right now. And I'm not doing it to sound cosmopolitan or to be chic or to appear scholarly. I'm doing it because these thinkers have stimulated me in new ways to conceive of marketing, and they can help you too if you know how to think about their work. First of all, for anybody that's a scholar or an academic, some would argue in this characterization that you see. In fact, I'll tell you where it comes from. Victor, the third one mentioned there, mentions in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which I highly recommend. It's a wonderful book for marketing. You say, no, it's about surviving a concentration camp. It's about transcending with meaning. And too many marketers ignore meaning and thus ignore the bullseye. But we'll come back to that. I'll quote Victor. Life is not primarily a quest for pleasure, as Freud believed, or a quest for power, as Alfred Adler taught. And Adler was influenced by Nietzsche, by the way, but a quest for meaning. The greatest task for any person is to find meaning in his or her own life. Now, this is obviously Frankl's concern. And here's where we get practical. You might want to argue with me and say, no, I think Adler's right. I'm not going to argue. You might argue at a more profound level and say, I don't actually think that's what Adler was saying. I won't argue with that either. You might say, Freud is misunderstood in this sort of characterization. That's possible. I don't read in order to find the absolute truth in the words of these thinkers. I read as a reflective form of meditation to stimulate my own thinking. And I read all of these. I don't think Freud was right on his emphasis that everything is derived in some way or connected to sex. I would side with his protege who broke away from him, Carl Jung, in his disagreement with Freud. But that's not for today. And if you're an academic and you want to sit down and have an exciting conversation, let's do that at some point. I just want you to think differently about how you were appealing to people. And my interaction with these thinkers has made me generate my own new thoughts. And I would say the same for you. And today, that's all I want to do. Whether those characterizations are right or not, they're powerful. They're powerful. So, what's going on here, for the purposes of marketing, is I'm suggesting to you that it isn't, as I just saw, analyzing a presentation of a new treatment for an experiment that we're running, where we talked about this design being elegant. And I said to the team, why is that important? And why are we emphasizing that? And what's beneath that? What is inside the psyche of the person that would make that truly matter? Because I think it's too far removed from essence. Out of that came breakthrough thinking that may produce a conversion lift. And that's what I'm trying to stimulate with you. I want to suggest to you that there's a way to appeal to pleasure, and there's a way to appeal to power, and there's a way to appeal to meaning. If Frankl's right, ultimately meaning is what drives, and he wouldn't use the word drive, he would say pull, but that's again, me being careful. But he would say that the key is meaning. Now, I don't know, and I'm not here to tell you he's right or wrong. I will tell you, in my opinion, the highest and most powerful concept to appeal to is meaning. I'm not certain every human being is really pursuing meaning, but I am certain that pursuing meaning is probably the highest and in many ways the most powerful thing we can tap into, because I've seen the pursuit of meaning to help us transcend. It transcends pleasure and its limitations. It transcends power and its limitations. Some of us need power in order to achieve meaning, but ultimately, I know I want meaning. Now let me stop. Right now I'm about to lose you if you don't see the application. I'm going to show you pages. I'm going to show you ads. We're going to get practical, but I don't want to miss the opportunity for you to examine your own work right now and ask yourself, did my marketing efforts in the past ever connect to the meaning of my life? And more importantly, do they connect to it now? Or am I just doing a job? Because I contend to you that what we want to do with our community is not focus on marketing, but focus on the marketer. And the most important thing for you to see is how meaningful marketing can be, how it can make a difference, a positive difference, how it can bring value to your life. But to do that, you can't just read marketing literature. You got to get, aren't you weary of another way to leverage and Facebook to make money? Yeah, it's good to have Facebook. Facebook ads are producing. This isn't a negative comment on Facebook, but there's a million how-to pieces out there. It's the why-to that interests me. It's the why-to. Keeping that in mind, I'd like to challenge many of you to dialogue with us about the meaning of marketing, how powerful it is. I believe it's one of the most elemental forces in the universe. And I'm not saying that because I'm a marketer. I'm a marketer because I believe that. That's a different conversation. Onward. So then, the will to pleasure. What do you think is happening in the brain when you see these pictures? In fact, I'll do a step further than that. You look at the picture for a moment. Cliff, play the video. We're trying something. We've never tried it before. It's a beta test. We're going to try to run video. That's no, we're not going to try to run video. Okay, I'm being told there's a problem with running video. But let's just imagine that picture. You've all seen the ad, most of you. That chocolate drips, and it's so appealing. We know from studies with behavioralists and psychologists like Pavlov that the sound of a bell can cause a dog to salivate. Well, we do our own form of salivating when we see the right image. And I can tell you right now that there is a serotonin chemical released in the brain when that image is as compelling as it should be. Now, you need to ask yourself a question. Is it about the icing or is it about the serotonin? And is it about that brown, beautiful chocolate substance that appeals to us, or is it about what's occurring in the mind? And thus, if that's the case, how do we maximize the appeal to pleasure? Just think about that for a moment, but that's an example of the appeal to pleasure. Now, here is another example of a fragrance ad that is designed to make a man feel like he's more powerful. Now, I will not get into the political correctness of that. I will take the risk of alienating some people in my audience by saying that I like being a man and I'm not ashamed of it. But I want to point out that in this ad, they are absolutely appealing to that sense of power inside. And then let's look at another. And this is a question from my audience. This is a question from my audience. How many of you, most of you have seen the commercial, and we can't play that, right, Cliff? Okay. That commercial shows a sword being forged, and it finally resolves itself into a Marine, and it talks about what it means to be a Marine. Most of you have seen it. Is that an appeal to power? I've said meaning up there, you know that. But why isn't that really an appeal to power? Doesn't that look like an appeal to power? Somebody tell me if that commercial or even that flag with that symbol on it, someone said discipline. David, now this is where we can work. David Carey has said discipline. But if you put an ad targeting discipline, you're going to see people run from it. You're still right, David, but now is where we start to cash in what we've been learning. Why do people transcend the pleasure principle and become disciplined? Nietzsche said, and it's interesting to me, and it's my own translation of and paraphrase, but in a way he said the asceticism of the past has been replaced by the athlete. In fact, I think Frankl said that. I'm going to change that. Frankl said that in his primary book on logotherapy. Meaning that the athlete is like the former ascetic of the religious past who takes great personal sacrifice, trains, does without, all for a sense of meaning. That the victory is about more than the little symbol we give them, but what it does to their sense of personal meaning. So come back to me again and tell me, why isn't that about power? Because obviously a Marine has power. They're armed, they're trained, and they're part of a military force. Gene says pride. Yes. But Gene, would a Marine tell you that he's doing it because it's good for his ego? Why is there pride? What drives the pride? Think with me. Use your chat feature if you have an idea. Because if you can start to think this way, David, this applies precisely to what you're doing in your work. And many of you that I've spoken to in the past, it applies precisely to how to tune up your results. Okay, Nick Burns, voice from the past. Good to see you on here, Nick. It is not, so he's on the right track with this. Good men is the key. And what makes a good man in the, let's call it in the psychophilosophy of this commercial's approach? Sacrifice, now we're getting closer. Shared commitment, now we're getting closer. Let's just take the word sacrifice. Philosophers and psychologists for years have tried to understand, why will a human being sacrifice themselves? We have seen mothers do amazing things for their children, but what about a story I recently read of a man on the beach who saw a child drowning and leaped into the water, saved the child, but drowned himself. He didn't even know the family or the child. Why? Because most species won't do this. What's the human being pursuing? That wasn't pleasure. It certainly wasn't power. Why did he voluntarily pay a price? Because meaning, as Maria is touching. The Marines offer you meaning. You would not get the sacrifice of patriotism unless you believed you were pursuing meaning with your life. There would be no patriotism without meaning. There would be no soldier sacrificing their life. Now, if you're a marketer, one of the greatest mistakes you can make is to bypass the need for meaning. For instance, I'll take David for just a moment because I know his situation and I hope he doesn't mind. But David helps the middle class protect themselves against catastrophic loss associated with medical illnesses. He does other things, but using legal techniques, he's able to help you preserve your savings. David's contention to me was that if a wealthy person has a catastrophic illness, they're fine. If a poor person has it, when I say poor, I just mean somebody with a low income, they're covered also by government help, but the middle class takes the hit and often they're completely wiped out. David champions the middle class in everything he does. But David, let's flip that around. I know, David, that gives you meaning. David was in the army himself. I know that gives you meaning. Rescuing those people, being a champion of them keeps you going because I've talked to you. But you know what keeps me going? Because yesterday I spoke with my trust attorneys for my children and my will and all those. I do this periodic work and it's long and hard. But one of the pieces that drives meaning for me is my obligation to protect those I love. And so even though it's an onerous task sitting down with estate attorneys and all of these things, I am paying that price because I'm transcending the inconvenience with the desire to be a good steward and to take care of my family in the right way. I'm not looking for any pats on the back. I'm trying to make a point that if you appeal to me any other way, you wouldn't hit the bullseye. So now I come back to this intensity factor. This is not about improving your value proposition. This is about improving its application so that it appeals directly to that thing inside of my mind that matters the most. Is everybody starting to see where we're going with this? Is this start to make some sense to you? So let's go beneath. There's a Greek word. I hadn't intended to use it, but I'll use it. I'll write it right here. That's tau, epsilon, llama, omicron, sigma. It means telos, and there's several different forms of the word. I'm not parsing it for those of you that know Greek. I'm just getting to the basic for my audience. And what I want you to understand is that it's sort of like the ultimate purpose. And in Aristotle's work, it's a profound term. For you, it's a profound term too, because it is essentially the bullseye for the chain of whys. So let me ask you a question. Why are you listening to me on YouTube right now? Why are you putting up with me? Well, whatever answer you give me, somebody else might, but why that? What if you said, because I'm learning things will help me increase my conversion rate? But why? And then you say, well, because if I improve my conversion rate, then I'm going to lower CPA and I'm going to raise my top line, and that actually makes my margin, I have triple impact. Lower CPA, higher volume, better margin. But why? And you say, well, if I do that, I'm going to make more money, and somebody says, but why? Now, you may find when you pursue the chain of whys, it leads you to an empty place, and that is the beginning of nihilism. But that's a different conversation. You may pursue the chain of whys and realize, wow, I'm doing the wrong thing. I should get off this and not waste my time with this Flint McGlaughlin character. Or you may pursue the chain of whys and you may realize that you're here for a different reason. You're learning something that impacts your life and its meaning. I'm not saying you will, but again, we could continue. I'm telling you that you need to ask yourself the fundamental why that connects to the bullseye in the mind so that you are appealing to what really matters, not the features. When I was in sales, Nick's on the phone. Nick knows this. Everybody says, as copywriters, don't talk about features, talk about benefits. It's like a truism now. It's been said so much. But I would argue, don't talk about features. You can tell me a feature, you can interpret it to a benefit, but you haven't gone far enough if that's all you've given me. You've got to go past the features, past the benefits. And you've got to go into the essence of my motivation. When you can find that target, almost the same value proposition has far more ability to penetrate the noise of the marketplace and get into the soul. And so I would also contend for you that when possible, go up the chain. Pleasure, power, meaning. Meaning, forget what the psychologists were saying. Forget which one is right or wrong. Just think about your own context and say the closer you can tie the purchase to meaning. Now, sometimes that may be very hard. But the more you can do that, the more power you're going to have. I need a time check from my team. And while I'm doing that, I need to take you to the picture that summarizes everything I want to teach right now. Okay, take a look at this picture, and I'm running out of time, and I wanted to do live op and show you more, but I think it's most important to get these concepts communicated. Now think about a part two and how to expand this. I want to build websites, by the way. I didn't want to build them for years. I'm tired of optimizing broken websites. I want to do the entire piece from the psychology all the way up. And hopefully, some of you will be able to partner and do that. And that's when you can take this and get it right in the hardwiring, not up here at the surface level. But for now, come back with me and let's just talk about this house. Somebody, audience, if you'll do what I'm talking about right now, you'll be able to cash in my second point. I want to ask you to do three things. This is an exercise. This is work. And I do it for homework, but give me some tentative answers right now. How would you appeal to pleasure selling this house? I'm going to ask that question first. I want to point out for you that I could sell this house to a buyer leveraging pleasure, leveraging power, or leveraging meaning. Let's go to pleasure first. What kind of words? Just tell me, Nick, you're a copywriter, you know the words. Others on here also. Give me the words that you would use that would appeal to pleasure. I'm watching them come in. And by the way, while they're coming in, you're right. It's the Message 2011. I don't know your real name. Tell us your name sometime. But why peels back the layers to the core? Yes, it does. All right. American Dream. That's a good word, Maria. What flowers would you put there? All right. That's a question. All right. If I'm appealing to pleasure, I'm going to use words like comfort. I'm going to talk about enjoyment. I'm going to use words that appeal to the pleasure sensors in the hardwiring of your brain. Now, we could expand that. There's more coming in. Elad. Elad said family values, but I'm going to argue with you on that, Elad, even though that's exactly what I want you to say. Keep that word. Hold that, and I'll come back to it. Relax, Nick says. That's right. Comfort. That's right. Quiet. Those are all the right kinds of words for this. Now we're going to appeal to power. I need you to give me words that appeal to power. All right? And imagine, it's very easy to imagine that many people make a purchase in a high-end gated subdivision to send a message to the rest of the world and to all of their guests. What are the kinds of words? You know, investment, financial security, accomplishment, achievement. You know, I'm talking about the home that gets a jumbo loan because it cost a lot, or bought cash. These are people who are leveraging the home to tell everyone around them, I have achieved. Have you seen people like that? How many of you have seen? And I think some of us go through cycles in our life. I think we start out, many of us are motivated by such a thing. As time passes, it means less and less because in the end, meaning will transcend power or pleasure. All right, good. Now, you've made it. You deserve our neighborhood. Exactly right, Nick. We worked with Toll Brothers on a series of research projects. They're the largest luxury home builder in America. They build, their homes are over $1 million, and it's amazing how many they build every year. And the last little experiment set generated a $75 million line. I could talk about it, but I won't now. I've seen how you appeal to luxury. Now, here comes my favorite part. How would you appeal to meaning? I'm 54 years of age. I honestly don't care about a home that symbolizes power. And pleasure is nice, but once you have enough, you don't need more. So I don't care about it being too huge either. I've had all that. We've had all that. I'm after something else. Meaning. So Brianna says children, yes. This is the place where some of the most powerful memories in your life are generated. This is the place where you raise a family. This is a place where you achieve some of the most valuable moments in your entire existence. So David's writing copy. Your family deserves a haven from the rat race to grow and build the experiences that last a lifetime and create the security that, see what's going on? Good. You're thinking this way. Now, I'm out of time. Memories that last a lifetime, another great phrase. Nick Burns, family, profound thinking, memories, yes, all of that is right. Now here's the point I want to make for you. We're looking at the same idea, a home, which really is, a box with a roof. And yet we can appeal to all three of these epicenters with the same item. That should tell you the application of what we're talking about. That should tell you why it's important to think through what's the highest and best center of let's call it energy, that you can appeal to. And when that is right, let's go back to everything we've been learning today. You can see it in one line, and I know you like big infographics. Probably when I'm done with all these things, I may build a special infographic that explains it all, a poster for you. But what I would say for you right now is, first of all, ask at the right time. At the maximum moment of motivation. The next thing I would say is achieve enough intensity by appealing to the epicenter of their buying energy. And think about that in terms of pleasure and power and meaning. And stay as high up on that process as you can. That gives you a way to generate more perceived value and thus more personal value from the transaction. Everyone, thank you for being with us today. Everyone stand up. I'm being told I'm out of time. Can you give me some feedback? Because today was pretty esoteric. Hopefully it was practical enough. Give me your thoughts. I'm grateful to have you on and in our community. Please subscribe and like and share and all that stuff that'll help us grow. We appreciate you.